Does the U.S. government have splaining to do over the explosion of the Nord Stream pipeline?
I want to thank Noble Gold for sponsoring today's video. Most Americans don't own sound money. Sound money is defined by the Constitution as gold and silver. It's been accepted as sound money for over 5,000 years. And even though it's been artificially suppressed by the international banking cartel, it was the best performing investment class for 2022. In that year, the S&P was down 20%, the Dow was down 10%, and Bitcoin was down over 65%. Gold and silver outperformed them all. Open a gold or silver IRA with Noble Gold Investments this month and get this quarter-ounce American Gold Eagle for free with every qualified IRA of $50K or more. With thousands of 5-star reviews, there's a lot of happy people who are glad they went with Noble Gold. Check them out with my link in the description and in the pinned comment. Now, back to today's video. According to a report by a veteran investigative journalist, the bombing of the Nord Stream underwater gas pipelines in the Baltic Sea was a covert operation ordered by the White House and carried out by the CIA. Seymour Hersh, a Pulitzer Prize-winning reporter, has claimed that U.S. deep-sea divers using a NATO military exercise as cover planted mines along the pipeline that were later detonated remotely.
Investigative reporter Seymour Hersh, who's been around for more than 50 years, just wrote a piece on Substack that includes this, quote, last June, the Navy divers, U.S. Navy divers, operating under the cover of a widely publicized midsummer NATO exercise known as Baltops 22, planted remotely triggered explosives that 3 months later destroyed 3 of the 4 Nord Stream pipelines, according to a source with direct knowledge of the operational planning.
In September, a series of powerful explosions destroyed the Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipelines that run through the Baltic Sea from Russia to Germany and provide cheap gas to mainland Europe. The attack was soon revealed to have been a deliberate act, but no culprit has yet been identified. 85-year-old Hersh, who broke stories like the mass murder of 500 civilians at My Lai in Vietnam and the torture of prisoners at Abu Ghraib, the prison over in Iraq, says the black op was ordered by the president and that the attack was carried out by the CIA in cooperation with Norway. In a 5,000-word report published on the online publishing platform Substack, Hersh writes that the operation was disguised, quote, under the cover of a widely publicized midsummer NATO exercise known as Baltic Operations 22 or Baltops 22, which was conducted in June off the coast of Germany. He says that Biden's decision to sabotage the pipelines came after more than 9 months of top-secret planning within the American national security community. He says, quote, for much of that time, the issue was not whether to do the mission, but how to get it done with no overt clue as to who is responsible. Once hailed the greatest American investigative reporter, Hersh's more recent stories have been called into question. These include articles about how the U.S. found Osama bin Laden and calling into question the use of chemical weapons on Syrian civilians by Syria's regime, which were criticized for relying on heavily anonymous sources and lacking hard evidence. In his report on Nord Stream, Hersh has quoted an anonymous source, quote, with direct knowledge on the operational planning. He said that deep-sea divers from the U.S. Navy's Diving and Salvage Center in Panama City, Florida, which is the largest diving facility in the world, planted C4 explosives alongside the pipeline, which were later triggered by a sonar buoy dropped by a plane. Hersh has claimed that on September 26, 2022, a Norwegian Navy P-8 surveillance plane made, quote, a seemingly routine flight, end quote, and released the sonar buoy. He says, quote, the signal spread underwater initially to Nord Stream 2 and then on the Nord Stream 1. He wrote, a few hours later, the high-powered C4 explosives were triggered and 3 of the 4 pipelines were put out of commission. Within minutes, he said, pools of methane gas that remained in the shuttered pipelines could be seen spreading on the water's surface, and the world learned that something irreversible had taken place, end quote. By the way, Nord Stream is run by a Swiss-based company whose major shareholder is Gazprom, which is Russia's energy giant. Up to this point, Russia has spent about $20 billion building the pipeline. Nord Stream 2, which was completed in 2021, was not yet operational at the time of the sabotage. Hirsch notes that Biden and his foreign policy team, which includes his national security advisor Jake Sullivan, his Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, and Undersecretary of State for Political Affairs Victoria Nuland, had spoken out against Nord Stream 2, which would have yoked European to Russian gas for decades. It would also have increased the Kremlin's political influence over the continent and at a time of heightened tensions between Moscow and the West, and significantly boosted revenue for Russia. Nord Stream 2 alone would have doubled the gas supply already provided by Nord Stream 1. In February 2022, just weeks before the Russian invasion of Ukraine, while discussing possible sanctions against Moscow, Biden warned,
"If Russia invades, that means tanks or troops crossing the border of Ukraine again. Then there will be no longer a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it."
How will you do that exactly, since the project and control of the project is within Germany's control?
We will, I promise you, we'll be able to do it.
Hirsch's anonymous source says that because of the president's threat, destroying the pipeline, quote, no longer could be considered a covert option because the president just announced that we knew how to do it. He wrote, quote, the plan to blow up Nord Stream 1 and 2 was suddenly downgraded from a covert operation requiring that Congress be informed to one that was deemed as a highly classified intelligence operation with U.S. military support. There was no longer a legal requirement to report the operation to Congress. All they had to do now was just do it. Hirsch's report comes after Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, alleged last week that the attack had been carried out by Washington in an attempt to ensure its global dominance. Moscow had previously accused the British Royal Navy of blowing up the pipeline, but did not produce evidence. Last week, the Times revealed that German investigators remained open to theories that a Western state carried out the bombing with the aim of blaming it on Russia. The explosions are also being investigated by Denmark and Sweden. Some Western officials initially suspected the Kremlin, although they stopped short of formally accusing Moscow. However, 23 diplomatic and intelligence officials in 9 different Western countries told the Washington Post recently that they had yet to see any evidence linking Russia to the attack, with some saying they didn't even believe Russia was to blame. President Putin's spokesman said allegations that Russia would cripple its own pipelines were stupid and absurd. After the attack, of course, Washington's District of Criminals rejected allegations that the U.S. was in any way involved. Quote, the idea that the United States was in any way involved in the apparent sabotage of these pipelines is preposterous. It is nothing more than a function of Russian disinformation and should be treated as such. Thanks for not lying to us, U.S. State Department. Adrian Watson, a U.S. National Security Council spokesperson, said, this is utterly false and a complete fiction. Who do you guys think blew up the pipeline? Leave your thoughts about this for the world and the global thought police in the comment section below. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to this channel, hit the bell notification icon, give it a thumbs up, share it with everybody you know. Don't forget to subscribe to my private email list through my website, highimpactflix.com. If you want to support the channel further, grab one of these hard-hitting, conversation-starting designs that you can put on a shirt, hoodie, mug, cell phone case, hat, whatever you want. I'll see you in the next heavily censored shadow ban video.